Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we are studying the prophet, the Navi Zephaniah, chapter 2. And I am Saul Weinreb, the host of the podcast. In the last chapter, chapter 1, we learned how God will gather the entire world and all of its inhabitants for judgment. And then the prophet kind of zeroed in. He started with the whole world, went to human beings, and eventually aimed his words at the people of Yehuda, the people of Judah. And also his main criticisms of the people of Yehuda were those that were dishonest in their business practices, those that took advantage of the poor, that took economic advantage of the poor specifically. And he ended with the admonition that the punishment that God will mete out against the people of Yehuda would be significant, and he described that in gory detail. But the idea that no matter how much money you have, that's not going to save you from God. In other words, all this money that you accumulate, that you think is so valuable to the extent that you rob other people of it, and you're dishonest, that it's not going to help you when the day comes about. In this chapter, there's several things that are different. Number one, the focus of the chapter is not against the people of Yehuda, but now he kind of zeroes out. Before he started with the whole world and then ended up talking to the people of Yehuda and eventually the people of Jerusalem specifically, and eventually the people within Jerusalem who were the criminals, so to speak. Now he's kind of zeroing out. He's going to go look around at the nations that surround Yehuda. Also, his main focus is not going to be on specifically financial issues, but it's the issues of arrogance and pride. Sometimes, of course, the two go hand in hand, but his focus is going to be on humility, righteousness, and on the fact that God will punish those who are arrogant, that refuse to be humble. So let's begin. The first verse. There's numerous translations of this verse, and I'm going to go through several of them. Hitkoshishu v'koshu hagoy lo nichsaf. Now, I've identified about 5, maybe even 6 different ways to understand this. So first of all, what does hitkoshishu v'koshu mean? So one would be the translation of the Radak, who explains it as follows. To hitkoshishu, from a language like koshesh, kash, which he understands as searching. So he's saying search and search yourself. In other words, he's telling the people that they should search out their deeds. And we'll see how this fits with the next verse in a minute. Search out your deeds. Hagoy, the nation, lo nichsaf, which doesn't desire to search themselves. In other words, so the prophet is giving advice. He's saying, people, search through your deeds, improve yourselves. And he calls them the nation that doesn't want to do this. And he's telling them, do it, even though you don't want to. The next verse would then fit, because the next verse says, do this before God comes and punishes you. In other words, save yourselves by searching out your deeds. The rabbis of the Talmud and Chazal, they explain that koshishu v'koshu means look at yourself first. Kashot atzmacha tchila hitkoshishu, look at yourselves v'koshu, before you go and start looking and searching out other people's deeds. That's one of the things that would go along with that. The Ibn Ezra has a completely different understanding of this word. He understands the word hitkoshishu as to argue and to prove. So according to the Ibn Ezra, what it would mean is it's a very different, and he also translates no nichsaf, meaning you, the nation who is disliked by other nations. Nichsaf from a language of desire for something, a want for something. Lo nichsaf, you're the nation that no one wants to have. And God is advising them, prove yourselves, meaning argue, defend yourselves, you, the nation who nobody wants to talk to. Rashi understands the word hitkoshishu as to gather together, and he also uses like koshesh kash, which we have in the Torah by the gatherer of wood, that hitkoshishu means gather yourselves together and gather your actions together. Vakoshu, you nation, lo nichsaf, that does not desire to come together as a people. So number one, it means come together as a people, and number two, get yourself together, so to speak. Get your stuff together, so that you can come. I know you don't want to do that before God, but do it, because God is coming. The Mitsudos understands this a little differently. He also thinks that it means search, like the Radak said, and he says it means koshu, search yourselves. But the second part, you nation that doesn't mean that doesn't want to search yourselves, but it means the nation that is not, the language of nichsaf, meaning here to love or to desire, you nation that is not desired by God. So then it would mean koshu, search yourselves, you nation who is not desired by God. Now, who is this nation? Is this nation Israel? So that would be the first thought, that this Goy lo nichsaf is a reprimand of Israel. But actually, if we look carefully, and we'll see this as we see the next few verses, why I understand it this way, that he's actually talking to all nations of the world. And in other words, he's focusing on all the other nations around him, and he's saying, you the nations that you don't have your act together, get your act together, because of what I'm about to say, which is verse 2. B'terem ledet chok, before the decree of God to punish you is born, before it happens. Kimotz ovar yom, because ovar yom, the day is going to pass quickly, just like the chaff from the wheat just blows away in the wind. It's going to happen real fast. B'terem lo yavo aleichem charonaf Adonai, before the anger of God comes down upon you. Fix yourselves. B'terem lo yavo aleichem yomaf Adonai. And then he kind of says it repeatedly, emphasizing it again. There's something terrible coming, so you better act now. Get your act together. Fix yourselves and do something, because do it before there's no more time left. Bakshu es Adonai, search out God. Kol anvei haaretz, all those of you out there in the world, and I'm translating haaretz here, meaning the entire land of the world. And we'll see as the chapter continues why I'm translating it this way. Asher mishpato pa'alu, those of you who are keeping God's rules. Bakshu tzedek, start searching out righteousness. Bakshu anava, start searching out humility. Ilai tisasru biyom Adonai, because maybe you'll be able to tisasru, find shelter, as the translation that I saw, which is really appropriate here. Maybe you'll be able to get away. Maybe you'll be able to save yourselves. And why is it? Because, and here's where I know that this time he's referring to all the surrounding nations. Remember, he's doing the opposite of zeroing in. Now he's zeroing back out. Last chapter I was focused on Yehuda, on Judah, the people of Judah in front of me. Now I'm talking to all the nations around me, because very soon ki Azah azuvati, the area of Azah or Gaza is going to be left behind, is going to be deserted. And Azah is the land of the Philistines. The Ashkelon, and the city of Ashkelon, Lishmama. Azah azuvah, you have to look at the issue here is the poetic language using this play on words. Azah, Azuvah, Gaza will be abandoned. The Ashkelon, that kind of poetry you could only see in the original Hebrew. The Ashkelon lishmama, Ashdod and Ashdod batzoharayim yigarshua. The people the city of Ashdod in the evening. During the day. In the afternoon, Yugarshua, she will be expelled. The Ekron, and the city of Ekron, Teoker, will be uprooted. Again, a play on words. Ekron, Teoker. We'll see some more of those duality of words and plays on words as we go on. So what Zephaniah is doing here is he is looking at all the nations around and telling them, search righteousness, search humility, because if you're not going to be humble, you're going to get destroyed, and you better do it fast, because the time is up, or the time is almost up. He continues to focus again on all the other nations around him. I want to point out here how remarkable this is, because what Zephaniah is doing is he is openly addressing the nations surrounding him, the other nations, and openly predicting that they're going to get destroyed if they don't repent, if they don't come back to God, if they don't become humble, and he's begging them to do so. So he's not wishing upon them destruction, even though these are the enemy countries. Rather, he's wishing upon them and hoping that they return to God. And we'll see more of this as we go on. Now he's focusing. Woe is to those that live on the coast of the sea, the nation of Kiretim. Most understand that the nation of Kiretim is either a subgroup within the Philistines, or it's just another name for the Philistines. And Divar Adonai Aleichem Kenan Eretz Pilishtim, the word of God is coming against you, those that live in the land of Canaan, the land of the Philistines, which is within the boundaries of the land of Canaan. And I will destroy you. This is what the word of God is, with no more people living there. And the coast of the sea is going to become a place of kiros roim, a place of where the a nevos is a place where they live, kiros, and where they dig, is how the Radak explains it, roim. So a place where the shepherds dig themselves whole places so that they can build begidros stones, so that they can make pens for their sheep. So you're going to be taken over. Your cities are going to be destroyed, and it's just going to be desolate, and all you'll have there is shepherds just grazing their sheep. Who are going to be grazing their sheep there on the seacoast when you get thrown out? Your enemies. He's talking to the Philistines. The remaining people of Yehuda, of Judah, will alehem yirun. So just like when the prophets and Zephaniah and all the other prophets, when they're criticizing Yehuda and predicting destruction, they talk about how their enemies are going to graze on the land that used to be part of Judah. When Zephaniah the Navi is talking directly to the people of the Philistines, he's telling them that when God destroys you, your enemies, meaning the people of Judah, are going to be grazing their sheep on your land. Bivatei Ashkelon, grazing in the houses of Ashkelon, which is the city of the Philistines. Be'erev yirbatzon, in the evening, they're just going to go ahead and lie down in the homes that used to be yours. Ki yifgedem Adonai Eloheim, because God is going to remember them. Vishav shivisam. I'm going to translate those last two words in a minute, but over here the idea is the she'eris Yehuda, the remainders of Yehuda. And who are those remainders? Those are the humble ones, the ones that I didn't destroy, the ones that remained humble before God, the ones that were righteous, that were just. Those are going to remain, and they're going to destroy you, the Philistines, if you don't heed my warning and repent and come be humble. Vishav shivisam, the last two words of this verse 7, he's saying that God is going to return their returnees. That would be one way of understanding this. This is one of those places where the Masoretic text has two versions. The traditional text here has two versions of this last word, shivusam, which would mean those that return, or shivisam, which would mean something more like their fortunes, where God is going to restore their fortunes. I saw in the JPS translation. So he's warning the Philistines that this is what's going to happen. And now he goes and turns to other nations in the area. Remember, Zephaniah now is standing in Judah, but he's looking at the surrounding nations, the enemies, and he's begging them, guys, get your act together before God comes and gets you. So first he looked to the Philistines and said what's going to happen to them if they don't return. Now he looks to other countries. Shamati cherpas Moab. I have heard the cherpa of the Moabites. How the cherpa, meaning how they embarrass God and shame God, and they stand up to it, God, and they refuse to be humble. V'gidufe bnei Ammon, and all of the things that the Ammonites say about God. asher cherfu es ami, that they make fun of and they insult my nation, vayagdilu al gevulam, and they go ahead and they think themselves that they're so great because of what they have and all their power. So again, he's criticizing specifically the pride. And when someone is pride, someone is too proud, what do? Cherfu es ami, they go and they make fun of others. In this particular case, God says, you're making fun of my nation? You think you're so great? Lachein, therefore, verse 9, chai ani, I swear, says God, Noam Adonai Tzvaot, so says God of hosts, Elohei Yisrael, the God of Israel, Ki Moab, the people of Moab, Kisedom Tihiyeh, will end up being destroyed like Sodom, like Sodom. Uvnei Ammon, and the people of Ammon, Ka'amorah, will be like Amorah. There's another play of words, Ammon, Amorah. I didn't point this out before, but when he criticized the people of Kiresim in verse 5, he said you're going to be like Kiros Roim, another play on words where they dig places to put their sheep pens. Well, let's continue. I'm going to destroy Moab and Ammon like Sodom and Amorah. I'm still in the middle of verse 9. Mimeshak Charol. All you're going to be able to hear there, and this is how the Radak translates it, is the noise of the wind blowing through the weeds that are growing. Umichrei melach, and just lumps of salt all over the ground. Ushmamar olam, and will be destroyed forever. Sheiris ami vazun, and the remainder of my nation. Again, the remainder of my nation, we're going to see in the next chapter who's going to remain from the people of Judah, the one who have overcome that sin of haughtiness and pride, the ones who are humble. If we look specifically at in chapter 3, verse 12, which we're going to do in the next podcast, it defines who this She'er Sami, who's the remnant of the people of Judah. V'hisharti b'kirbech, v'hisharti, the same word, She'erit. Who is going to be the remnant? Am aniva dal, those that are humble and poor, the ones of chasu, the ones that B'Shem Adonai, the ones that take refuge in God. That's the She'eris that's going to go ahead and inherit your land. Der Yivazum, V'yeser Goyi Yincholom, and the remainder of my nation, after I'm finished meting out my justice against them, the remainder of my nation, the righteous ones, Yincholom, are going to end up inheriting the lands which once belonged to Moab and Ammon, which are being punished for their pride. And again, God emphasizes Zoslam Tachas Gaonam. The reason why I'm punishing them, he says in verse 10, is because of their haughtiness, their pride, their arrogance. Ki cherfu, because they made fun of, Vayagdilu, and they insulted Al Am Adonai Tzvaos. They made it as if they were greater over the nation of God. They made fun of the Israelites because they were more powerful and they were bigger and they were better. And because of that, I'm punishing them. Nora Adonai Alehem. God is going to be fearsome and awesome to them. Ki razah, because he is going to starve out Eskol Elohei Haaretz, all of the gods of all the other lands. And this is where, when it says Haaretz here, clearly it means all of the lands around. Zephaniah uses this term to refer to all of the lands and all the countries that are around, which again means to me that when we said back in verse 3, and it says Bakshu es Adonai kol anvei haaretz, search out God, all those who are humble in the land. It's the same thing. He was talking to all of you that are humble, that are out there. Search for God, come back to God. And now he's saying that God is going to starve out all of the gods of the land. The relationship between arrogance and pride, the bad kind of pride, and idol worship is again emphasized here by Zephaniah. The last verse, I'm punishing you because of your pride, and I'm getting rid of all of your idols. This is a something which is a point that pretty much every prophet has emphasized, and I've pointed this out throughout the podcasts, that the main issue with idol worship is the one who's worshiping the work of his own hands, is that it has to do with arrogance. This is a point that's been driven home over and over and over again. The prophets don't seem that upset about the theological error of polytheism. Although they do, but that's not the main thing. The main thing they're worried about is that what polytheism is, that it leads to arrogance. And then all of the men, all of the human beings, all human beings will bow down to God from his place. This is interesting because it specifically points out from his place that they're able to worship God. When once God comes and punishes the prideful ones, the ones that are left, they will start bowing to him from their places. They don't necessarily need to be in Jerusalem or Zion, but from their places. Kol Iye Hagoyim, all of the far-flung places of the and the far-flung countries of the nations, they will all, those that remain after the day of punishment, those that were humble and did follow the prophet's advice, will be then bowing to God himself. And then the Navi continues and points his finger somewhere else. Gama tem kushim, even you far out, the people of Cush, which is generally understood to be Ethiopia, somewhere Sudan, a nation somewhere down there in Africa, which is a little bit farther away. He's going, remember, he's zeroing out now. Chalalechar bihema, you're also going to be destroyed by my sword. And also, I'm going to, this is verse 13, I'm going to look in the other direction, not south towards Africa, but north. I'm going to look north towards Assyria, and I'm going to destroy Assyria. This clearly does date Zephaniah to, we said in the beginning of the first chapter that Zephaniah said his prophecies in the days of Yoshio, of Josiah, the king. Now we know that the first several years of the reign of the kingdom of the reign of Yoshio, of Josiah, the people were still evil and corrupt and so on. And then Yoshio and idol worship was spread throughout the land. And Yoshio then led a major revolution and brought everyone back to God after several years into his reign. Now, also, we know that during the first several years of Yoshio's reign, we know this from both historical records and the biblical records, that the first several years were the last few years of the kingdom of Assyria, and it was in the middle of Yoshio's reign where the people from Babylon, ended up conquering the empire of Babylon ended up conquering the people, the empire of Assyria. So Zephaniah here is obviously talking when the empire of Assyria still existed, and its capital Nineveh still existed. So he must have been speaking in the early years of Yoshio's reign, which then also means that the prophet Zephaniah, who is telling the people to return to God and predicting the destruction if they don't, that he was really, to a very large degree, successful in his message to the Jewish people, because the king later did take heed and did lead a major revolution and bring the people back to God and got rid of idols and brought people back to the temple and so on. So there was a major revolution in the people turning back to God that happened. Well, we don't know, it's not documented anywhere that it was directly a result of the words of Zephaniah, but certainly one would conclude that Zephaniah would have been one of the rare examples of a successful prophet. And certainly it would seem that way. And God is going to, let's go back to verse 13, he's going to turn his attention to the north and destroy Assyria. V'yasem es Ninveh lishmama, he will destroy its capital, Ninveh. Tziyak hamidbar, it will be dried out and parched like a desert. V'ravtzu b'tocha adorim kol chaisogai, and within the lands of Assyria and the city of Nineveh, again it will be turned into pasture land for the animals that had belonged to the nations that lived around Assyria, the nations that used to be subjugated by Assyria. Assyria will be destroyed, Nineveh will be destroyed, and their land will just become a place where their neighbors just bring things to pasture. Gam ka'as, gam kipod, and the birds that typically inhabit lands that are ruined, where humans left, the ka'at and the kipod, these are different kinds of birds, translated I've seen as jackdaws and owls. B'chaftoreha yalinu, on the tops of the doorways, on the lintels of the doorways, they are going to make their nests. Kol yishorer b'chalon, you're going to hear the sounds of the birds chirping in the windows that used to be windows of houses that people live. Now they're just nests for birds. Chorev basaf, destruction will be seen in the homes. Ki arza era, because the wood of the homes is stripped bare of all of the things that people, the paint, I don't know if they had wallpaper then, but you imagine walls that are stripped bare. That's ki arza era. Chorev basaf I translated as destruction will be seen. Basaf in the gateways would be one of the ways to understand it, or the thresholds. We'll see destruction. The last verse, 15, to finish this chapter, Zos ha'ir ha'aliza, this city that was so full of happiness. We're talking about the city of Nineveh still. Hayosheves levetach, which was living securely, thinking that everything was cool. Ha'omra bilvava, who said in her heart, Ani ba'af siod, I, and there's nothing else but me. I am the biggest, powerful city. I got everything. Everything is cool here. It was the strongest one. How has it become now it's just a ruin? Marbetz lachaya, it is a place where wild animals just hang around and rest. Kol over aleh, whoever walks past this city of ruins, yishrok yanyalo, they'll just hiss at it and wave their hand as if like, ugh, it's nothing. The city is destroyed. Thank you so much for studying Zephaniah chapter 2. Looking forward to studying Zephaniah chapter 3 together.